Welcome to Dwell on These Things, a podcast of Dwell Community Church in Columbus, Ohio, where we discuss whatever is honorable, pure, lovely, commendable, excellent, and praiseworthy. All right, it's Paul back again, this time with two old friends, Ryan and Jessie Lowery, talk about the transition from college ministry to adult. Jess, you're a science teacher at Akili, is that
Yes.
right? One of our two schools supported by Dwell that primarily serve urban students. Any fun topics or projects lately in class?
Yeah, we just did water rockets yesterday, so they got to go out and see who could blow up the water rocket the highest.
Cool. So a little physics. Is it general science or do you do?
Yeah, I do physical science, which is half physics, half chemistry in freshman year, and sophomore year is biology.
I know you enjoy nature and birds, so is biology, is that your favorite?
That's my favorite.
That's cool. And Ryan, you're Jess's husband.
That's how I'm known, yes.
What's that like?
It's amazing. 25 years of bliss.
25?
Well, 24.
Close. Ryan, you are co-senior pastor of Dwell Community Church
Yeah.
and one of the leaders of an adult sphere collection of adult ministry home churches, which, Jessie, you're one of the coaches in the sphere, right? Mm-hmm. Ryan, what's it like leading a sphere that has Jessie as a coach?
It's just one of the many privileges of my life.
Good answer.
It's fun. We make a good team. We're kind of differently wired, but usually in cahoots. So it works out really well.
Not many spouses work together. You enjoy that?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, I wanted to have you guys on to talk about the transition from college to adult. We recently had a large migration of students from college. How many?
472.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's quite a bit.
In 1 month.
1 month. So I'm guessing it didn't just happen that all 472 just happened to be at the right moment to move up. Why so many all at once?
You'd have to ask the college ministry.
Don't get in trouble.
Wow, that's going to happen. But
regardless.
We had some funny days at work. So, between around October, November is kind of our busiest time of year for sphere leaders. We are working on the planning retreat and then the budget retreat. And we're setting the direction and the course, for the year for the church. So it's a very busy time. And there'd been talk of, sending a good number. And a lot of people in a year would be 100 people coming up from the college ministry to adult. But they were saying, we think it's going to be like 200, 250. We were like, wow, that's just a lot of people to figure out how to accommodate and get going. And then there was over a period of 3 days, it was like, just kidding, it's going to be 300. Just kidding, it's going to be 350. Just kidding, it's going to be 450. And,
Because of interest, do you think?
Well, I think what happens is once the ball starts rolling, people are like, well, if you're going, I'm going. And it's actually really good for people to do it in intact pods of people or even whole groups coming up.
People that you know, that you've been in group with.
So you want to be with the people that you have history with. And so it kind of just started snowballing downhill in a rapid manner. And we were excited about it, but it was also like, oh, wow, this has never happened before, anything near this. And so it's got 15 groups that are all coming at once. And it's really kind of a game changer for the footprint of that demographic in adult ministry. There were about 220 before this, and now there's 700. And so it's kind of an exciting
in this young
time.
Professional type group.
Yeah, people in their mid to late 20s, married, single, without kids, or if they have kids, they're real young. Yeah.
I know there's bubbles of demographics within our church. Is that part of this too, that there's just a large portion of 25 to 30-year-old people in our church right now?
Yeah. The college and high school ministries grew really rapidly over a period of 10 years where there was just a lot of people coming to know the Lord and a lot of churches, home churches being planted. And those folks from 10 years ago are now in a stage where it's an appropriate time and life stage to get involved in adult ministry. So it's sort of a historic harvest of people who love God and have been doing great ministry, who are ready to take on the new life stage challenge.
It's exciting. I know one of your burdens is doing it right. You guys want that. So we thought it'd be good to interview a couple that's made this transition recently. You guys came up just a couple years ago, right?
Right.
How long ago was that?
I believe it was 16 years ago.
16 years ago.
It's 2007 for sure.
Yeah.
Can you recall what led you guys to make that move at the time?
Yeah, we had 2 kids, and Logan was 5, so he was about to be school aged, and Lexi was 3. And it's funny because I feel like we both got the idea separately, and we're sort of afraid to tell the other because we were sphere leaders in the college group, and it felt like it's too much to try and talk about going adult. But when we came and spoke to one another about it, we had both already been feeling that.
I was wondering if one of you was more apprehensive, or so it was
we
kind
were
of a
both
leading.
all the way there.
Cool.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
You know, looking at the sort of the landscape now of the way spheres have evolved, and you have more straddled spheres or spheres that cover larger demographics. Looking back, do you think you would have preferred something like that instead, or the way you did it? Or I know that's hindsight, and God led you at the time, but
I think the way we did it was pretty painful. I think that it was, in some ways, Jess and I are sort of the early edge of the second generation. And so the first generation of people in Xenos who came to Christ in the 70s and the 80s and the early 90s all kind of grew up together, had kids. You know, Jess is Dennis's daughter, so she was one of the first kids born in the church, if not the first kid born in the church. And so by the time we came around, there weren't very many people our age in adult ministry because those people had come to Christ through the student ministry. And so it wasn't like there were a lot of choices where if you wanted to go to adult ministry, you didn't necessarily know a lot of people. There weren't a lot of people your age. And we had a profound sense that there was something that needed to be fixed there because people were tending to stay in the college ministry into their mid to late 20s or early 30s, and they didn't have necessarily all the support structures that you would want to see in terms of like hearing teachings about marriage and hearing teachings about parenting. And so there was a sense that it needed to happen, but that there was a lot of trepidation about it. And that was definitely one of the factors that made us both start to feel like we needed to do this not only for our benefit, but for the benefit of the church and for the benefit of the people we were ministering to.
Yeah, I think that was a big part too, is just being able to evangelize to peers, because I was meeting lots of moms and they weren't interested in coming to a college meeting. And when I would try to sort of go with them as a visitor up to an adult CT or something, they liked it, but I just couldn't do both. You know, I couldn't do college and adult. And we wanted to be able to reach out to those peers.
that's cool. And you're talking here, I think some people think of it as a giving up of something. And you said it was scary and difficult, but it sounds like you both were moved towards something, towards peer ministry, towards... What's cool, Ryan, is you're saying here's something that isn't clear how we do this right. And that was a call from God to you to let's try to do this and figure out how to make it work.
Yeah, I think that's how it worked out, yeah.
It's cool. So how would you compare the transition process, the experience then to now?
Oh, you know, in our day, we had to walk 3 miles in the snow and... You know,
to make campus.
Yeah, it's just like these young people, they have no idea how easy they have it.
The rusty playground.
Yeah, I'm definitely getting to the age where I understand that way of thinking now. I think it's primarily different because I think the relationship between student ministry and adult ministry is stronger. You know, there's a dynamic of old people tend to think young people are careless and too extreme, and young people think older people have sold out and are lame. And there's probably cave paintings in France that have that depiction on it. I mean, it's just happened that way forever, right? And so there's always been sort of that. And then I think the unity between student and adult leaders and student and adult members has improved. And then just having landing places, where there's just a lot of options. There's now 27 home groups that are kind of fit in the YoPro demographic. That's a lot of choices, and you're likely to have friends to do that. I think as you'll remember, Paul, we came up with you.
Same time.
And we just had 2 groups. And that was really all there was at that time. And so that's a really different, situation.
Yeah, I remember at the time we felt like it was necessary too. We just found out we were pregnant with our second. Felt the need, but didn't want to make the move unless God was calling. But I remember there was an apprehension. Am I moving towards something that's less fruitful or less exciting, less radical even, as you're describing there? Do you guys think that's the case?
No, I think that there's great work to be done in adult. I think there's certainly challenges, and I wouldn't want to soft sell some of the challenges. For example, in evangelism, we're often dealing with couples instead of singles, which means double the free will. You know what I mean? And that kind of thing.
Exponential free
which
will.
is a challenge, yeah. And also, I think there are things that an 18-year-old or someone in a more transient, I'm taking this class for a quarter and then next. There's a little bit of more willingness to do low stakes. Come to my house and someone be like, yeah. Whereas in adult world where you're with your coworkers forever, you're with your neighbors forever, the stakes are a little bit higher. And people, I think, get more nervous to ask people to come to things. And once we do ask, others are more nervous to come to a stranger's house and things like that. However, even though it's a bit slower and there are some challenges, we do see the same sort of exciting things that they see in a college group where we see people's lives changing. We see people coming to Christ. We see people getting discipled. We see people getting raised up into leadership. So it is very fruitful and robust ministry too.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where there are different obstacles and there are different opportunities, and it's just a matter of the language of harder or easier. It's more like just the opportunities and the challenges are different. I think we have better refined wineskins for dealing with opportunities and particularly the challenges of college work. That to me is one of the most exciting things about doing this work with young professionals is we haven't had a large group of people in that demographic in this church in 40 years. And the culture has changed dramatically since the 80s. And so we're in a space where I think there's need for innovation and trying new things, being creative, trying to overcome different theological questions, different sociological issues, and also different life circumstances. And so to me, it's an exciting opportunity to say, okay, let's build something from the ground up that I wouldn't call it pioneering work, but I would call it work that hasn't been done with that kind of focus in over a generation.
You describe these challenges with a smile on your face.
Yeah.
You enjoy that.
I do, yeah. I really like the idea of solving problems that, being on the ground floor of solving problems that energizes me.
It's cool. So you're talking about there's no lack of opportunity to be used by God in this transition. But what is different? For those who are venturing now into this and those who are considering in the future coming up into adult ministry, joining a YoPro group, what's different?
I think one thing is we tend to have more free time than people in the college group schedule, in particular evenings free. So, different groups and different spheres are different, but we went from being out 5 nights a week to being out 2 nights a week. And that can be a blessing or a curse. So it's a real good time when you're going adult to think proactively about how do I want to use this new stewardship, you know what I mean? And how do I could just fill it up with Netflix and have it be boring and a drag and feel like adult group is less cool. Or I could decide to sort of set up a few things in my life where, once a month I'm trying to volunteer here, every week I'm trying to have this dinner here and those sorts of things. And you can make it a really positive resource and have more family time, more time with friends, good time for outreach. Our groups like to do like a happy hour on Friday and try and reach out with people at work, different things like that. So,
But that's not as structured. They're not told to do that.
no.
Why not set up 5 nights a week then?
I mean, you can if you want to.
Right.
I think the structure thing is important because I think that having a lot of structure is great, especially when you have a lot of free time. And I know I never had more free time in my life than when I was in high school and when I was in college. Yeah, we were going to class and, working part-time, but the freedom there versus when you have a family and a career and responsibilities of that are noticeably different. And so the structure is great and you kind of learn good habits and you sort of, the current kind of helps carry you along in some ways because there's always something to do. There's always something going on. I think one of the differences is when that structure reduces, then you're faced with a question, what do I want? Who am I? What does it look like when no one's watching? When you live in a ministry house with 4 or 5 other people, everybody always knows what's going on. It's just like that's how community at that level works. When you get out of that environment, there's less of a current that's going to carry you through healthy spiritual habits. So you've got to be challenged with, okay, am I doing this because I want to do it, or am I doing this because this is what I've been a part of? And it was easy to go with sort of the flow. And I think that's a good experience because I think it kind of challenges us to wrestle with God about what does he want and who am I and why am I doing this? And I think that transition from college group to adult group, it's very common for people to sort of wrestle with that. And I think they feel like it's bad. It's like a bad thing to wrestle with, but I think it's a good thing to wrestle with. I think it's healthy.
To decide for themselves.
Yeah.
Here's how I want to live my life.
Yep.
Yeah.
What are you going to do, man? We're not going to provide the level of structure that you're used to. We still have home church. We still have cell group. We still have CTU. We still have prayer meetings. But you're going to have to work within this framework and decide who you want to be.
So that's a challenge to expect coming up. Any other challenges people go through as they go through this transition?
Yeah, I think at the time that a lot of people come up, they maybe have gotten used to doing more what we were doing at that age, which is helping other people with their ministry. And then when you come adult, it's like, oh, it's time for me to be back on the front lines again. And I think that's exciting for some people. Like I know that we were talking to the 472 at a meeting with some of them, and they were saying, we feel so excited, almost like we're being sent on the mission field. You know what I mean? And that there is a lot of excitement with that, but also it can be, people can be sort of like feeling like I'm rusty or, you know what I mean? That sort of thing.
I've been supporting younger people's ministry for a while. Now it's on me.
Right. I think, too, another one of those challenges is an opportunity is learning how to do ministry together with your spouse in a more connected way. Typically in student ministries, it's sort of like the guys do the guys thing and the girls do the girls thing. And, but to be kind of locking arms and being like, okay, how do we minister together to this couple we might be sharing or connecting with, other married couples that are at various stages of seeking or even beginning to walk with God. And that's something that you get to do as a couple. That's pretty cool.
Not always easy to learn how to do that with a partner.
Yeah.
Seems like a God thing, to learn that. We've talked about the difficulties. What are the fresh opportunities to be had? Some of them you're describing there. Opportunity to do ministry together, opportunity to learn how to do peer work. Anything else you guys see that?
Yeah, I think there's sort of this opening of your world that happens that's really cool, where I sort of realized I had blinders on looking for 18 to 24-year-olds, you know what I mean? And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, this 60-year-old I work with, you know what I
My
mean?
grandma.
Oh, yeah, totally. It was like, oh, my 13-year-old neighbor that stops by the house all the time, I could tell her about junior high group. And
Mm-hmm.
that's super exciting and
Yeah.
really cool to sort of realize the wider world. And I think that a lot of people have sort of fell into kind of a ministry burden or niche, which is cool, where God sort of leads them to a specific group of people, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, cool. What advice then do you guys have for those who are considering when to make this transition?
That's a good question because there aren't necessarily strong criteria. Like it's good for singles to come, good for marrieds without kids to come. It's good for people with little kids to come. So one of the challenges, like when we help kids transfer from junior high to high school, we know the time to do that is when they finish junior high. High school to college, the time to do that is when they graduate high school. That's where the transition has always been a little more difficult because it's a little less clear. You can keep doing fruitful ministry in college group for many years after you graduate. And there are many people in college ministry who aren't in college. So there's no measuring rod that's just like, this is clear, like now you got to go. But I think a lot of it would have to do with ministry opportunity. If you have a lot of opportunity and you're reaching 20-year-olds, 21-year-olds, that you have a lot of them in your life and God's using that, then that would be a good reason to stay. I think, though, as you start to have kids and as they start to get towards school, the structure of the college ministry, some people can really do it. They can have careers and family, but usually those people have, for example, in-laws in town who can help with kids or really
Robust support structure.
or like a really flexible job, And so it's difficult to determine that. But I think people that are thinking about it should pray, and they should think about the ministry opportunity, how the Spirit's leading them in their work. I also think that they should talk to their home church leaders, their close spiritual friends, maybe their sphere leaders. Getting outside input and getting some objectivity about that, I think, is really good. Because it's sometimes hard to tell, just left to your own devices, like what's best for me right now. It's good to get input on those kinds of things.
And for the 472, how do you hit the ground running and thrive in adult ministry?
I think the dynamics of all the things that we've just talked about, like the short answer would be like, listen to this podcast, but it's the attitude of you're going to find new challenges. Are you going to see also the new opportunities? And are you excited by the problems that you're going to face, or are you defeated by the problems you're going to face? Like you're going into a really exciting time that can be a really fruitful field for ministry, but it's change, and change is hard for everyone, and it takes intentionality. We talk about this a lot when like new couples get married, or even when you plant a new home group. It's like the first couple months are going to kind of set the tone. Concrete's wet, but you're going to develop patterns of behavior that are going to be hard to break later. So why not take those first 3 or 4 months and really establish those structures for yourself, what you want them to look like, and then build good habits spiritually, emotionally, physically for this stage of your life that will then help carry you through, for a long time.
So right now is an important season.
Very much so.
I think, too, I like to tell people that it's normal to feel a little unsteady making a change like that, and that it happens to everybody. And I think it takes a few months before you really feel like you got your sea legs and that kind of thing. And that also represents an opportunity. First of all, I think it's good for them to know it's normal. And that's just part of the process of shifting in this way. But I also think it really represents an opportunity where we feel sort of like unsteady and like, what is this? And, curious. I think it can draw us closer to God. I think it can make us more open to discussing what does work for you? What do you think about this? And we have some robust fellowship, I feel like, with God and with others as a result of kind of that jarring move. You know what I mean?
Yeah, cool. Well, I wanted to end with asking, you guys have done young professional focused ministry now for several years. Do you feel like you're where God wants you to be? Are you excited about working with this demographic right now? Do you foresee long term God keeping you here?
I mean, that's a fun question. You know, on the one hand, yes, because we're definitely energized by it, excited by it. And, you know, we kind of view it like we've been trying to build a bridge for 15 years, and recently 472 people just walked over it. So maybe it's a good bridge, you know, like.
It didn't collapse?
Right. Yeah. You know, so there's a sense of like this thing that we felt really dedicated to trying to build seems to be fairly tested, and not that there aren't always ways of improving. We love the people in our home group, and we don't have any immediate plans, but we've recently started talking, you know, more years down the road, who knows what the Lord will lead, but the idea of leading an empty nester group with some friends that are just going into that demographic, that's uncharted territory for the second generation in that way, and that could be something maybe we would think about doing down the road.
Yeah.
Really?
Yep.
Work with people your own age?
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you ready?
Yes, I'm in, dude.
Maybe down the road.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, grateful for you both joining in to talk. Really grateful, too, for the work you guys have done in our church shepherding this process. Yeah, thank you, guys. Special prayers as well for the 472 or so members who recently made the transition to adult ministry. Pray that God would use this to bless you and your neighbors, coworkers, and others. Grateful, too, for everyone tuning in. If you'd like more information about Dwell Community Church, you can go to dwellcc.org. And if you enjoy these podcasts, press the subscribe or follow button to receive alerts when future episodes come out. Until then, press on.